It's a Loudwire Nights first. Toni Gonzalez welcoming Tarek Jafar of the Blue Stones to the show tonight. Welcome, Tarek.
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing pretty good, man. Happy New Year. You are my first interview of 2020. I'm so stoked. What'd you do to celebrate the new year?
Ooh, I keep it pretty quiet usually, but this is like the first year that I decided to actually go to some sort of function, and it reminded me why I keep it pretty quiet.
I totally did that one year. I did the worst of the worst. I did Times Square, New Year's Eve.
I don't know if this is necessarily true, but I've heard people have to like bring bags to like pee in and stuff.
It's crazy. Once you're there, you're there. And I mean, I like some beverages and I need a bathroom. Like, I was like, yeah, no, this is never happening again. Where'd you go?
It's kind of hard to describe. It's like a local like convention center, and they put on like a big New Year's party and everybody gets suited up and there's dinner and it's fun, you know. It's just like, I don't know.
It's a lot.
I just felt like it was so overkill, and it's just another day and it turns into another year. Like I find it's the most hype holiday of the year, you know?
It is. All right. So are you a Canadian living in Detroit, or is it the other way around?
It's pretty close. So I'm Canadian. I live in Windsor, Ontario, which is a border city to Detroit. So usually I explain it like downtown Detroit is 20 minutes away from me. Like I could hop in a car and be right downtown in 20 minutes. There's a border crossing, but because we do it all the time, it's kind of just, routine for us here. So a lot of people consider us as like, the Americanized part of Canada just because we're so close and all of our media and sports and music is from the States. So yeah, pretty much I like to tell people I'm from the Detroit area because it's true.
Got it. Got it. All right. So you are part of a two-piece band, right? The Blue Stones. And we've seen two-piece bands before, Royal Blood, White Stripes. There's quite a few of them. It's not super, super common. So I want to get into that a bit. But first, let's talk about, the backstory. How did you meet Justin, your bandmate?
So we were actually both on the high school football team together. And that's how we met. We both played football, and we kind of expanded into our main group of friends. But it wasn't really until we were in university that we started to play music together, which was about 6 years after we met.
Oh wow! What was your position on the football team? For no reason at all, just asking.
I started as a linebacker, and then I moved to running back before I got injured, and that was it. And that's usually the case.
There ended your football career. All right. So fast forward to 6 years. You're in university college. You and Justin are chatting, and you're like, hey, let's start up a band.
Yeah, I mean, so Justin was pretty busy with his music. He would perform in high school talent shows, and then he'd been in a couple bands as well, like just playing as the drummer. But for me, it was kind of the opposite end of things, where I was pretty private about the stuff I was writing. I didn't really show anybody. I would just write it for myself and be at home and put it on my computer and sort of listen back. But I don't know really how it came about, but there was one day where I showed Justin, I was like, hey man, you want to take a listen to what I've been doing? And he liked it, and we started to jam together with the sort of intention of adding more members, but that just never happened.
And when you're writing those early years before you show it to anybody, are you kind of inspired by someone, modeling yourself after someone? Was there someone you kind of looked up to?
Yeah, I mean, I like so many different types of music, and I always have. But I guess if I were to name some early influences, it would have been like the Black Keys, White Stripes, Jimi Hendrix, but then also a band called Mute Math, and early Coldplay is a big influence. When they were actually just a four-piece band playing like your typical alternative rock, that was a huge influence on me.
They were huge. Yeah, there was that period. And we'll go back to Mute Math because I know that there's that Paul Meany connection. We'll go back to that in a minute. All right, so you're writing, Justin's in, you're doing this. All of a sudden, you guys are making music together and you realize, all right, the biggest advantage and disadvantage of this band just being me and this guy is what?
Okay, so the biggest advantage is, finance stuff aside, I'd say the biggest advantage is touring is incredibly easy and always has been for us, because it's just him and myself. And now as we start to add like crew staff, it's a very tight and sort of efficient crew because we don't have that many people in our touring party. So just being us two gives us that much of an advantage. We're kind of a small unit that makes big waves, which has always been the best thing about being a duo. Disadvantage, well, there's just less people to do the jobs, and Justin and I have usually been pretty hands-on with everything, especially in our indie days, and would have been nice to have a couple extra hands and a couple extra minds to setting up the stage. These are just things that we've always had to do ourselves and split 50-50. Even things behind the scenes like emailing and setting things up and advancing shows, that was a disadvantage.
That's pretty badass, though, because you know everything from the ground up at this point. You're still a very young band, yet every aspect of it you've probably had a hand in.
Yeah, the best piece of advice I ever had was from my dad, and he said that if you want to be the manager, you have to do all the jobs. Mm-hmm. So that's pretty much the philosophy that Justin and I have ran with since day one.
There's always discussion about, two people in a band and disagreements and who settles the disagreements. And in my head, the front man always has veto power. Can you confirm or deny this?
Toni, you're great. You're just great. You just get me.
Yeah.
No, it's actually been pretty even between Justin and I. Like, we both value each other's opinion because we both take different perspectives on things. But funny enough, I feel like we haven't really had very many disputes over anything. We usually have the same sort of vision in mind, so decisions are made pretty easily. But when we did sort of have differing decisions, we would set it like, listen, if this is your realm, then I'll let you take this one. If it's my realm, then I'm going to take this one. So, for example, if it's something to do with drums, I'll just hand it over to Justin. I'm like, you know what? You know best. You take that one. Mm-hmm. But now that we have management and other things involved, it's nice to bounce arguments off of other people if and when we have them.
Right. Well, you don't hear about the real arguments till like 30 years down the road when the book comes out and maybe there's like a biopic. Then we'll get the real story. But okay, sounds very diplomatic.
Are you foreshadowing to something that I don't know about?
I'm just saying there are certain patterns. There's patterns. Okay.
True.
As we touched on, Bluestone's young band. So far, you all released your debut album, Black Holes. You're currently working on the sophomore record. Talk to me about Tarek and Justin in 2020 versus who you are now, how you've grown as men, as musicians.
Yeah, it's a good question, because every band develops and evolves over the course of their career. I feel like on Black Holes, that album was written a long time ago, and we were definitely younger with different problems. And I think that was written at a time where both of us didn't really know what we wanted to do. We were very unsure. There's a lot of sort of ambiguity about our careers, but also a lot of conflict in deciding, what the hell are you going to do for the rest of your life? But this was always a passion of ours. And that sort of came out in the music. There was a lot of ambient, spacey tones, and it sort of reflected how we felt. We kind of felt lost in space. Huge world of a ton of opportunities that you have to make decisions on, and that came out in Black Holes. But now I feel like over the time that we had spent touring and writing between Black Holes and now, I feel like our sound has changed. We're a lot more upfront, a lot more confident in our sound and who we are as a band and who we are as people. And I feel like that comes through in the music now. We know exactly what we want. We're in your face about it. You either like us or you don't like us. We don't care. And we just put out the music that we want to put out. That's the vibe that I'm getting from a lot of these new songs, which, in my opinion, are the best things that we've ever written. So I really, really can't wait to share them with everyone.
Well, I've since gone back and listened to Black Holes, but the song that actually introduced me to the band, I have to be honest, was right here on Loudwire Nights, Shakin' Off the Rust. So let's talk about that. That's the latest one that we're here to talk about. What inspired it?
It's funny, that was one of the more recent songs that I had written, but we had started to work with Paul, and we were showing him some of the stuff that we had written in the past and some of the old music, and there's a lot of things he liked, or there's a lot of things he didn't like, and I kept showing him new ideas, and he was like, you're just not there yet. Keep working. And I kind of went through a period where I felt like I wasn't really good enough, or I wasn't writing anything that was good. I wasn't really worthy of anything that was good. And then kind of a stroke of, inspiration hit me, and I started writing this cool little stomp beat and a cool little riff to go along with it, which basically became Shakin' Off the Rust. And lyrically, it's reflecting, you might not feel good enough, or you might not really appreciate what you've got, but you should just shake it off and just keep pushing forward, because you are worth success. So that's sort of what that song revolves around.
Okay. We're going back to Paul Meany for a second. You mentioned Mute Math earlier in the interview. He's the lead singer for Mute Math, right? He produced the latest 21 Pilots album. You guys are working with him. Another duo, which is interesting. Was it his work with 21 Pilots that caught your eye? Obviously, you're a fan of Mute Math. Was it that?
Mainly Mute Math, yeah. I mean, we had been fans of Mute Math since like 2007, 2008. Huge influence on me, both recorded music and live. We've always really adored that band. And as we moved on, as Mute Math sort of hit a peak and then sort of like slowed down, I know Paul jumped into more of a production role. And I remember listening to that 21 Pilots album and hearing these elements where I was like, I know this, like this sounds familiar to me. Ended up being Paul that had worked on a lot of the production for that album. And I loved Trench. I thought it was a great album. So it had always been a dream of ours to work with somebody like Paul. Our managers one day said, you know, who would be your dream producer to work on your next album with? And we sort of said his name as almost like a joke, like we never thought it would actually happen. We were like, oh, well, Paul Meany would be great. But, I mean, that's obviously shooting for the stars. And I remember our manager being like, okay, like just give me a few days. And turns out Paul had gotten a link to watching us play a live session on YouTube, and he loved it, and he was in. And we couldn't really believe it, you know. But yeah, it's mainly from his days in Mute Math that really wanted us to work with him.
What are some of his calling cards? Some things that are very unique to Paul and his production.
Yeah, so he's very, very good with like piano and keyboard sounds and making these sort of rhythmic background ambient tracks of keys that are looped over one another. And that's like his chord progressions are very, very iconic to me. And I sort of heard those in the background of Trench. But then also, like, he's just a genius when it comes to beats and rhythms, and then vocal patterns as well. Like the way that certain things are sung, more so background vocals. And those are little things that you can hear. And then he has these little production tricks. Like he'll take the sound of like a drilling something into a piece of wood, and he'll turn it into like a little extra sound effect that goes into a song, and it'll sound really cool. So he's kind of really creative when it comes to that.
Very cool. I'm personally a lyrics gal. So what are some of the themes on the upcoming album so far? I know some of the songs have been written. I don't know if all of them have been written. Maybe you could offer some clarity on that.
Yeah, actually, we just finished recording everything. Yeah. So everything has been written and recorded and laid down in the studio, and we're really happy about that. But we touch on a few things, you know, more so there's a lot of songs about like confidence and having your own personal swagger. That's really something that we wanted to get our fans. Like we've always said, we want you to be able to throw our music on and get yourself pumped up to go into like a big meeting or to go into a game that you're about to play or anything that you want a confidence builder for. And that's something we want to instill in our fans. We want you to feel like an absolute badass. And a lot of those songs on the new album touch on that both lyrically and musically. But also they touch on things like long distance relationships, touch on heartbreak, and it touches on sort of inner conflict. There's a lot of things. And sometimes we just have fun with the track and we just want to write a feel-good track that makes you feel good. So I guess it's just all over the place when it comes to the themes. Yeah, I think Black Holes was more of a central theme throughout the album. This one's more of like, I guess, different countries coming together to make a continent, if you want to think of it that way.
I like it. And it sounds like I have some Gemspiration headed my way on the sophomore album, which I could absolutely use. So awesome. Always welcome that. What would be, I mean, I know you don't have a timeline right yet for a release, but you are looking at 2020.
Yes. Yeah. Just really, there's no set timeline. We're doing a little bit of a different approach for this album. We're kind of releasing singles as we go along, just dropping them here and there. But as far as an official album drop, we don't have an exact date, but it definitely is in 2020.
Okay. Yeah. What would be the biggest compliment a fan of your music could give you?
One that really gets me is when somebody tells me that we've inspired them to write music or inspired their band or influenced their band in some way. Just because that was big for me way back when I was writing music and when we decided to start the Bluestones. It was based on a lot of our influences. We looked up to these artists and we were like, wow, like I would love to do what they do. So when somebody tells me like, hey, you know, we'll play a show and a local band will be at the merch table and they'll say something like, hey, you guys really inspired us and, you know, like you influence us. And that to me, it just flashes back to when I was writing music at a young age. And that really hits me. I think that's probably the biggest compliment that I get when it comes to our music.
Yeah, it's very full circle.
Yes, exactly.
Very cool. What's the toughest lesson the music industry has taught you so far?
Well, there's a lot. The toughest lesson is, especially nowadays, it's about 90% hard work, effort, and grind, and 10% of enjoying the glory of everything. That's really the way it goes, because there is so much that happens behind the scenes to put together a show, to put together an album, you know, to write an album. And really you get to showcase it for 45 minutes to an hour at our stage every night. And everything else is just hard work getting to that point. When it comes to like making music or wanting to be a musician or an artist, I mean, you got to be okay with the grind. If you don't love the grind of it, then you won't make it. And there's a lot of grind, that's for sure. There's long nights, there's long days, there's long drives. So that's what I would say is a tough lesson. The other thing is,
say it.
I mean, like, listen, man, like if you're in it for the money, then you're in it for the wrong reason. I'll tell you that much. Especially as like an indie musician, if you're in it for the money, then just get out. Get out. Go be a banker. Go be something else. Like, just get out.
What was your major, by the way? Because you talked about how you were in college, and I know you finished, and there was a period where you were kind of debating, do I do the music thing? Do I do the 9-to-5 thing? What was your major, and what field were you considering?
Well, funny enough, so my major was biology in university. So I majored in that. Then I took a few years off to work on music. But there was a little bit of a lull in the early days of the Bluestones, so I actually ended up going to England and I finished a degree in physical therapy. So I'm technically a certified physical therapist.
Nice.
As well as in the Bluestones right now. It's nice to have on tour, you know, somebody gets injured or somebody has a little bit of like a sort of a muscle kink. I have the skills to work that out.
No, it's awesome. And if one day you decide, you know what, I'm over this Bluestones madness, like you have your career, that's actually really smart. Speaking of tours and physical therapy and whatnot, you guys are starting a headline tour to support the newest music. Starts this month, goes through the end of March, U.S. and Canada. Are you accustomed to the rigors of touring yet? Are you guys about that van life? Are you doing the van thing still, I would imagine?
Yeah, but you know, the nice thing is it upgrades every time we go out. So we've got a nice little sleeper van now. We can actually take naps on. Well, I should say take vertical naps on. Before it was completely horizontal naps.
Oh my God.
But yeah, I'm getting used to it. It's more of a learning curve. But if you don't think about it too much and you just do, then it doesn't really bother you too much, to be honest with you.
Just be in the moment. Be
in the moment, you know, and you'll start to hit a routine too, and then it'll just be second nature. Every day is just a routine, and which is a huge part of being on the road. Just to have your own routine, it just kind of keeps you sane. Mm-hmm. So it's good.
I like it. All right, we're gonna wrap up. I'm gonna ask you 5 kind of ridiculous fill in the blank questions, and then you will be done with me. Starting.
Okay, I like this.
Don't get too excited just yet. All right,
oh, wow. Okay.
No, they're not bad. All right, so finish this sentence. On a day off when I have no responsibilities to fulfill at all, my favorite pastime is?
Video games.
Okay, I got to follow up. What's your favorite video game?
Right now or of all time? That's an important question.
Let's do all time.
All time, The Witcher 3. By far, The Witcher 3.
And right now? Let's do both.
Right now, I would probably say it's, wow. I'm kind of bouncing between a few right now, but they have this new Star Wars game where you get to play as like a Jedi, and I've been pretty into that one.
Okay, sounds good. Are you still in your 20s, by the way?
Well, I just left that. You know what's funny? It always comes as part of the video game question. It always makes me feel like a little kid.
It's you're still young, but you know, grown ass men play Fortnite. It's weird concept to me. I don't know if it's because I'm a woman or not a gamer, but I'm always like, I see my 10-year-old nephew playing Fortnite, and then I'll see a 40-year-old man playing Fortnite, and I'm like, really? But
I'm here to break the stigma on video games. Okay?
Yes.
You could be any age.
Yes, you're right.
You're a
to
gamer
each
at
his
any
own.
age.
No judgment. Who am I to judge? What do I know? All right, let's continue. I know I've made it when blank.
I'm in a tour bus. Oh, for sure.
Tour bus, all right. Whenever I see a dog, I
make a weird voice. I don't even know why it comes out. Like, it's just a weird sort of higher pitched voice. Like I'm trying to level with them or something like that. That's probably what the answer to that is.
I so want to hear that voice. I have a dog voice too, but I have a dog, so that's really.
I feel like everybody's got a dog voice, and everybody's is unique, and mine is just really, really embarrassing.
Okay, I won't push it. Here we go. Next one. I am highly allergic to
dogs. Funny enough.
Oh, maybe that's what happens to your voice.
Them, but I'm super allergic to them. I don't know why.
I'm so sorry for you.
I know.
And then the last one is my biggest fear is.
Wow. I did. Okay. Are we talking like spooky stuff or real life stuff?
You can take that in any direction you see fit.
In any direction. Okay. Not having enough time. That has always been a big fear of mine. I feel like I'm always racing against the clock here, Toni.
If you say so. I feel like I have too much time. What am I going to do? How am I going to kill an hour till the next thing? Right.
Video games. Let me get you started in that. Okay?
Look at all the time you'd have if you just left the video games behind is really how you should be looking at this.
How dare you? How dare you?
I dare. All right. Thank you so much, Tarek, for joining us on Loudwire Nights. That was fun. It's our first chat. Hopefully it will not be our last. Frontman and guitarist for the Blue Stones. We'll keep a lookout for more music from the band, including the sophomore album, and then that tour's coming up. So a lot happening. Keep us posted on your life, okay?
We'll do that.
Awesome. Thank you. All the best.